We're going to start working on Chapter 11. Chapter 11's got a number of different things that we're going to look at. Probably the most notable part of it is working with multimedia, but there's also a very brief introduction to some of these interactive technologies here, Flash, JavaScript, Java applets, etc. And then also a little bit of a thing on creating image galleries with CSS. My primary focus here is to get you through the multimedia part because that's the part you need for your homework. The CSS gallery, you're going to find that's going to be part of working on your case studies where they go through that. They do provide the code and examples for it. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. And a lot of these things really, pretty much the bottom half, 2/3 of this list here, really are some of the more advanced things that really they're just talked about at this point. As you move forward in the program, we will go through a lot of these things in much greater detail. So this, you can consider it basically an introduction to those things. All right, let's talk about this general concept here of what they're calling helper applications, plugins, and other components. And really, some of the things that are later on in the chapter where we start talking about APIs. I think we mentioned that acronym before. API is an application programming interface that's designed to give us capabilities that we don't normally have that we can leverage with pretty simple terminology. All right. The reason they talk about this before they dig into talking about the multimedia, because in the past when we would try to do like video and audio on a page, it was a little bit of a feat, because the browsers and the code that was behind them did not natively allow you to do multimedia. You had to use all this trickery, and then you'd have to get external software that you would have to add to your browser that would have the capability of actually playing the files, right? So if you wanted to look at like a video file of some sort, you'd have to write all these special tags, you'd have to get the plug-in, and there was still a chance it wouldn't work. It was pretty messy and ugly and hard to do. And for that reason, a lot of people just didn't do multimedia on websites, or they used things like Flash, which we'll talk about, which really now is kind of deprecated out of browsers and not really recommended as an approach. All right, so let's talk about some really important concepts about multimedia, and I know some of you might already be aware of these things. That's fine. Some of you it might be complete, new topic for you. These topics are not shallow topics, but our goal here is to be able to utilize the tools and apply them to the stuff that we're building. All right, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background on how the technologies work and then how to apply them. How to apply them is actually not that hard if you have the files and you know what you're doing. It's kind of a snap, really. It's about as hard as throwing an image on a page, really. But understanding what's happening is really kind of as important because it allows you to make good decisions when you're building a site as to how you're going to deliver the material, what tools you're going to use, and what is best practice. All right, couple terminology things here. Container, as it says there, it really designates what kind of thing you're working with. Okay, so if you're using, it says designated by the file extension, but if you're using, let's say, an MP3 file for audio, the MP3 is a file format, and really that's technically the container because it holds the information and it also dictates a format in which it should be played. Certain types of software will play it. Codec basically is a compressed acronym, excuse me. I'm looking at the word algorithm there. That basically stands for compression, CO, and decompression. When you're moving media files are large. They can take up a significant amount of space on a file system. So for example, we've looked at images, right? We looked at like images that come off of a camera. and they can be many megabytes in size, huge pixel counts. When we put them on a web page, really, we can kind of trim that down and compress it and adjust it and resize it, change file formats, and all of a sudden we have a fraction of what it originally was. And that's not really compression. Compression is the act of taking something in its native size and squeezing it down. Think of like when you guys like send me a zip file of your work, right? The way a zip file works is it goes through and it says, well, there's all this white space, we can condense that. There's all this stuff here, we can kind of approximate it and replace it with something simpler. And basically, we're taking something that's larger and squeezing it down, and it's much more efficient for delivery. Same thing is true for audio and video. And there's many different codecs, and the codecs do relate to the file format. So MP3, for example, is a codec. It's a compression mechanism, and then when we listen to it, it decompresses to something that sounds hypothetically as good as the original. When you get to know a little bit more about it, you'll find out that MP3s are actually very horrible sounding if you have your ear tuned into it. Now, the cool thing about HTML5 is they kind of did away with a lot of this like legacy stuff and came to the point where they developed what we call native audio and video tags. And the browser supports audio and video without any plugins. It just works. That is a really important step forward. All right. So they have a link here. If you guys want to take a look at it, please feel free. I'm not going to. All right. So some of the ways in the past that we used to be able to listen to audio or video files or anything. I mean, you notice Adobe readers here, right? Used to be if we wanted to look at like a PDF in the browser, that was kind of a special thing too. We'd have to get a plugin, or else we have to download it and then open the program and open the file. But now, like all the browsers have some sort of a plugin. And these are other very popular ones for looking at all forms of media. Images, audio, video, most typically. When we are looking at audio in particular, here's some very popular file formats. The one that's probably most prevalent in terms of web delivery is probably MP3, pretty much as a rule. It's a compressed format. And it's pretty efficient, and just about every operating system and browser now I think supports it. There was a time though that a couple of browsers, and Firefox was one of them, that would not support MP3, which was, I thought, very odd, you know, and I don't know why that was the case. I don't think it's the case any longer. But as you look at these file formats, it's kind of interesting to learn about them. The top two, the WAV file and the AF file, I forget how they say that, which is the Mac file format. Those are digital audio formats that are full CD quality. So that means they have the same resolution that you would get off of a compact disc audio file. That's considered full resolution digitally. Now, whenever you're dealing with audio files, or video files, all the signal information that you're hearing or seeing comes in a wave form. Waves are smooth. Digital files are not. So, for example, and I'm going to do something odd here. Actually, I don't think I can do it while the recording's running. I was going to turn on my camera and draw something on the board, but I guess I'll skip. But audio files, being that they're a wave, so I'm doing this with my finger now, in order to approximate a smooth waveform with something not so smooth, we have to use approximations. These audio file formats, they had to make a compromise. At some point they had to say, well, this is the rate at which we're going to digitize where we have good sound quality and we're not losing too much. But the truth is, analog signals are much superior in detail than digital signals ever could be. Because the digital signal always has to do a slice somewhere. It has to break it down. So people that have very well-tuned ears, musicians typically are the ones that can hear it the most because they're always dealing with audio. They can hear like harshness in the high end or a lack of low end, that type of thing. And when you're working with a WAV file or an AF file, those are pretty high quality. They're like 44.1 kilohertz. That means 44,100 samples this way per second, right? That should be enough. And then there's also what we call the amount, the bit depth of the signal as well. Somebody decided that with WAV files it should be 16-bit, but these days when musicians are recording, usually 24-bit is a minimum, right? And if you can get much higher than that, 32-bit float is really good. And then if you're doing the time slices the other way, you want to do what, 48K these days is kind of a minimum. And most musicians are doing like 96K, or some are going way beyond that. And the sound difference is pretty amazing. Now, when they came up with these file formats, you got to keep in mind this is early 80s, right, when CDs came out. So that was astounding technology. It was astounding technology. Now it's actually kind of woefully inadequate. We'll see if that changes in the future. Most people can't tell the difference, so they stick, right? And now we have mobile phones, so we still need efficient bandwidth usage, so we still have it. But these are some of the key file formats. Now, in terms of web delivery, WAV files, AF files, those aren't really good choices for web delivery. Because I could take a 5-minute song, turn it into a WAV file, and it could be 50 megabytes. It's huge. Or I could turn it into an MP3 and it could be 5 megabytes. And for all intents and purposes, sound basically just as good. There is a difference for those that are aware. So the ones that you're going to see most often being pushed out over the web are going to be MP3s, M4As, that's basically Apple's iTunes MP3 format. It's basically the same format. And then the OGG format, which is this new format that they're pushing quite a bit, and we'll talk about that. Then there's these other formats too that most people don't use. But MIDI files, anybody who's a musician, once again, people who program electronic music, it's a set of musical instructions. It's not audio. But browsers can play it in a primitive sense. So, but typically you're going to see these last three being used. Now, in very much the same way, we have a lot of different video formats as well. Some of them have the same types of ramifications to them. We have certain formats that can do very high bit rates, much higher quality than others. And just for example, we were talking earlier, like when we were taking a break, about AVI files. There's certain file formats that, like WAV files and audio, can have very high resolution and are often preferred when you're actually doing a recording. So like the screen capture that I'm doing right now is being recorded to an AVI. When I upload it to the server, it converts to an MP4 so that you guys can see it in your browser. And lately I've been pushing them to YouTube, and who knows what they do with it. But I know that YouTube, what's kind of interesting with them is they want the highest resolution possible now, because that way the user can actually select the quality they want, or it auto adjusts. That's pretty huge. That's an amazing thing, really. Now, in terms of popularity for pushing over the web, once again, you're going to see the stuff at the bottom. Most notably, the bottom three are the ones that you're going to be using for web delivery. The others work as well, but they're really not common. And the reason basically is because the file formats the files get so big. Okay, if an audio file is 50 megabytes for a 5-minute song, what do you suppose like a movie file is at full resolution? Like a Blu-ray, full resolution, 8 gigs minimum usually. You're going to be pushing that down over your data connection on your phone. There goes your whole data plan. You can't even see half the movie, right? What's really funny about that is when they came out with these super high bandwidth cell signals, you had people that were like, oh wow, I can finally watch a movie on my tablet. What do you mean I used all my data plan in a half hour? So yeah, got to be careful with that. All right, you guys should know some of this stuff, right? Lots of audio and video out there. Be careful what you put on your website. You can't take other people's stuff and put it out there. Now, I always tell students, we kind of get a pass in education where we can kind of do this stuff because we're just learning, and they're like, okay, whatever. But when you try to monetize it and do business off of it, use it to better your image and position, then it's a problem. So really, if you're going to host your own content, create your own content. It's really not that hard to do. Lots of great tools out there. There are things out there, if you go searching for download, that are Creative Commons that you have a right to download and use any way you wish. Some people are like, yeah, go ahead, I don't care. So be careful of that. All right. In terms of how we might provide audio and video on a web page, one approach is you can actually just provide a link to it. You can take the file, throw it in a folder, link to it, you click it, and what will happen in the browser will go to that file directly and open it up inside the browser and play it. That actually works. All right, and I will demonstrate some of this stuff shortly. So, all right, that's one approach. Well, that's great, provided that your browser supports the file format. Now, I was telling you a little while ago that MP3 wasn't supported by all browsers up until recently, which I always found astounding. But what would you do if you were using Firefox and you clicked that link and you wanted to listen to the MP3? Gee, I don't know. Well, the one, say that again? Open another browser is one thing, or in this case, if it was linking to a file, you could do a right-click Save As, and then download the file and open it that way. That's not really quite the rich multimedia experience we're looking for, but it's the way to do it. All right, so the technique when you're putting multimedia out there is you cannot predict what type of machine, browser, operating system, or version that a person has available. So you need to provide what they call alternatives. So you might, and this isn't exactly what I was thinking about when I looked at this, but you need to provide what they call fallbacks. What they're referring to here, and I probably should have read the slide first, is one of the reasons that drove me to start putting my videos on YouTube was that I actually have a deaf student probably listening to this video right now who is, can't hear. So when she was watching my videos initially, they'd have to get somebody from downstairs, the Learning Success Center, while she was watching the video, sign it all to her. So how do you do like a paragraph tag, something like that. But what's cool about the YouTube thing is it automatically transcribes and captions it. It works really well. So that's kind of an important thing. And if you guys are into watching with the Linda videos, for example, that's one of the beautiful things about the Linda videos is how well transcribed they are. All right. Old days, what did we used to do to get video out there? And really up until this day and time, Flash-based video players are still very prevalent out there. They're still very heavily used. Problem is when you leave a desktop environment and you leave a Windows environment, you start running into the fact that most browsers and operating systems and devices do not support Flash anymore because it's considered a security risk. But what is Flash? All right, it was basically a way, it was both an authoring platform and a delivery mechanism. So you could go into this piece of software called Flash, and it was a timeline-based authoring platform, meaning you could create stuff that would animate, move, interact. You can create websites with Flash. You can create video games with Flash. In fact, like you're on Facebook, half the games that you play, like Candy Crush and all that kind of stuff, it's all authored in Flash, which is kind of interesting. But basically, when you create something in Flash and you save it in what they call a SWF file, SWF file, and it's kind of, it's packaged up, it is compressed down, and then on the browser end, you would have to have the Flash plugin that would be able to open it up and play it. There are workarounds for that these days. There are browser plugins that you can download and install. You could always download the file and run it separately. That's another way that you could do it, just like we did with the audio file. But there's also these libraries out there Google offers, and I have a link on our course page, that allows you to run a little piece of JavaScript that allows it to play. It's really not considered a good platform, though, and if you're delivering files in that format, you probably want to think about changing it. And some people still use it. The big thing about the Swift files when they first came out was this. The fact that you could watch it as it was downloading. That's what we call streaming, by the way, right? We don't even think about it anymore. But it used to be a thing. It's like, wow, there's a movie online. Wait, I got to wait 3 hours to download it, and then I can watch it. Oh, now I don't have the software. I guess I got to download the software too, right? That was the scenario we'd get into. It was very frustrating. But now it's like we just take it for granted. We go to a website, we click on a link, it's streaming in. We watch like 5 seconds of it and decide we don't want to watch the rest and stop. So streaming is actually a very logical thing, right? Because we don't have to download the whole thing in order to see it. Just download as much as you need. All right. This is days of future past here. This is how one method we would use to embed a Swift file. So we would actually have to use what we call the embed tag that is no longer supported and recommended. And therefore I'm not demonstrating it because I really don't think you should use it. All right. Here's what we would do though if we wanted to work with some audio. And I am actually going to play with this a little bit here. In fact, maybe the better way to do it is, now, I'm thinking out loud and it's going into the video, which is going to sound silly in the aftermath, but we will actually play with it while I do the video. I think that makes most sense. But here's an example of the audio tag. Now what's neat about this is it can be used a few different ways. And I have a couple of those examples in the course shell. But this is one of the more recommended approaches, and that is you use the auto tag. You see how we open and close it. You know what, maybe I should just copy this code. We can play with it directly. And then what happens is you declare a source for the sound. So the first one that we list here is MP3. We also list the type of file, which indicates the codecs that's used. Just so you guys know, you can skip that. You don't have to put that in. It's considered good practice, but not required. Because ultimately the file extension, that 3-letter extension, is what will drive how it's played. So we provide the MP3 file, and then we have a second version of the same file using a different file format. That's called a fallback. Because if the browser can't play MP3, maybe it can play OGG. All right. And then finally, we have a different option, which is the first one that we showed you, which is just a link to the file so somebody could click on it and download it. Or the fallback could be like, well, get a HTML5 compliant browser. Cool. I wouldn't say that. You can always try to be funny, though. Doesn't always work. All right, since I have my editor open and we've been kind of playing with some pages, I'm going to do a save as here on my silly little thank you page. And I'm actually going to put it in Unit 6 this time. And I'm just going to call it audio, or maybe we'll just call it multimedia. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to paste in my audio. Wait, that didn't paste. Did it? Much better. Now, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm also going to go ahead and run it. Now, yeah, don't just click run. All right. So you see what this did? Loaded up a really primitive little audio player. It's actually not all that primitive. But of course, it's not going to do anything because I don't have those files, so that's kind of a problem. But it shows you that it creates the player, tried to show them. Notice it didn't show the fallbacks because it can bring up the player. Now, what I should do is I should probably find a sound to drop in here. So I'm going to pause the video momentarily and find some sounds. All right, I found a sound file here, and I'm going to copy it into my folder where my work is. And you know what I'm going to do here? This has got a lot of spaces and weird stuff in it. I'm just going to rename it. And I'm going to copy it right away before I'm done renaming it. Then I'm going to come in here, and under this first source, I'm going to drop the file in. Now, for those of you listening to the video, fair word of warning, I don't know how this is going to come into the video. Sometimes it's like so obnoxiously loud. Just warning you in advance so you can turn or have your hand on the mute control or the volume control. But I'm going to reload the page. I hear some of you in the classroom have already done this. So you see now that it recognizes the file is there, how it gave us the time range on it, gave us a volume control, and a play button. Pretty cool. Very simple. If I refresh the page, it doesn't play on its own. Do you guys notice that? Do you know you can make it play on its own? Autoplay? Do I have to say true? What's that? Oh yeah, that helps. Spelling it. Correct spelling is a plus. That's kind of cool, right? That I could go to a web page and the music starts automatically. That's pretty cool. Absolutely not. It's a horrible thing. Because I know you might have the impulse to do that. If you decide to do that ever on a website, you better make sure there's a way for the person to turn it off. Now what's interesting these days with music playing, that a lot of the browsers now are offering this. You see that? If I right-click the tab, it offers me a way to mute it. Because have you ever gone to a website, something autoplays, and it's like an ad that's way at the bottom of the page, and you try to click on it, and you know, don't do it. That's my advice. Because if you want people to be serious about going to your website, there's a whole contingency of people go, oh my God, I'm never going back to that site. Or they're at work and they're trying to be quiet while they're like sneaking a look at a website, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, good thing the boss wasn't walking by, right? So please be mindful of like that autoplay thing. And there's a few other little parameters you can throw in here, but that's like the essence of how that works. So that's the essence of how to drop audio onto a page. Video, not that much different. Provide various file formats. Now I have to find a video file. So once again, I'm going to pause the video. All right, so I found a video file that I'm going to drop in here. And one of my preferred formats for you guys to use video on the web is to use MP4. OGG, once again, is a good backup. The other format that's taken on a significant amount of popularity lately is one called WebM. And a lot of software packages are writing to that natively now. That one was developed for web delivery. And I think you'll probably see it increase in popularity over time. All right, so here is that. Notice that there's also this image that's being thrown in here, and that's so you can decide what image is shown in the video box before the video starts. I don't have that image, so I'm deleting it. Notice also that you can declare the size of the video player. That's pretty small. So I'm going to change it. Oh, how about, what should I make it? Double it? I'm trying to think of like a reasonable size. 16 by 9. So maybe we can do like 800 by 450. Now I already know that these two fallbacks here aren't going to work, but if I had the files to use, I would use them. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I think you guys will probably have a little bit of revelation here, I'm hoping, because now this is going to load up the video container. Oh, that's big. But boy, is it cool. All right, maybe we should change it. Am I zoomed in? Is that what the problem is? I probably am. Okay. Oh, there it is. That's the size it should be. A little smaller, right? I'm going to go ahead and hit play.
We might be owned.
Dark Army, the world's most dangerous hacker group.
They think the FBI's even snooping and it gets ugly.
They keep asking questions. I'm gonna keep telling the story, but if shit goes down and I get busted, I'm not gonna get locked up.
My husband will return soon, and this will all be on you.
He wants to hack Steel Mountain's climate control system.
Take care of yourself.
There will be fallout from this, and I'm gonna.
All right, so you get the point, right? So the video is playing. Now it's really cool because I didn't have to download the whole video before it played. It is, by its very nature, streaming it in. Now, that's a good thing because you want to see how big that file is. And this isn't a very big file. It's compressed down to 256 megabytes. It's still really big. It's not full resolution, but it's good enough. Benjamin? If I take it off the site, will it play at the same speed? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's controlled by the file format. That's a good question, though. All right, so that's how you drop a video in. Now the problem is, and this was more so of a problem in the past, is now I have to upload a video that's 250 megabytes. All right, now you might not think about that much because when you're watching stuff and you're using your home internet connection, your down speed is significantly faster than your up speed. Okay, so when I'm downloading the movie, not a big deal. If I'm trying to upload a 250 meg file to Kronos, I mean, you can like go take a shower, walk the dog, make a sandwich, come back, and it'll still be uploading. It'll probably take a good 10-15 minutes on most people's connections. Here on campus, it might only take 30 seconds. But it's still a large file, and it still has to get stored. And how happy do you think I'll be if you turn in homework that's got a 250 meg video file zipped into it, and I got to sit there and wait to download it? So guess what I'm going to ask you to do? Don't include large videos or audio files. Small audio files and no video files. So I'll show you how to work with video files that are externally hosted. Okay? Ooh, that's cool.
I used your...
Yeah, great. That's a great show, Mr. Robot. You guys should watch it. Absolutely. All right. At this point, what I want to do, I'm going to kind of take a little break from where this is going, because it's a logical break point, and show you the method really that you should use to put video on your web pages. There's a lot of issues with using your own content on your own server. Not that you can't do it. It's probably the most secure thing to do, right? Because you are in complete control of what's going on. But storage space is an issue. How you manipulate it is an issue. Is your server good enough to serve video? What if I had this video out on Kronos and I had everybody here in the room, like all 10 of you or 12 of you, whatever you are, all hit that video at the same time. Do you think Kronos is really designed to stream video in that fashion? I can tell you it's not, because we don't have that capability turned on. It will probably handle a few requests. Then probably when we get up to like a half dozen or a dozen, it'll probably crash the server or bring it to a complete crawl. So what do? We go to YouTube. So this is what you should do with your videos. And that's what I've been doing lately, is you all have a Gmail account that's associated with your school email. You upload your video to YouTube. You want to see how easy it is? See this little button here that says, well, let me make sure I'm on the right account first. Okay, I'm on my school account. You just hit the upload button. I go to my file folder where the file is. There we go. And I just drag and drop it in. Boom. It takes a little while to upload. You can see we're on campus here, but I think we have like 300 or 400 meg up. And we're at 12%, whatever. So it's taking a little while. Once it uploads, it has to render. And then you can put in a whole bunch of information and stuff. And then when it's all done, you have a link. Now, let's just pretend that we've already uploaded it. Fortunately, I just happen to have all these videos out on YouTube that I can grab. So let's do Web Project Management, no, Web Programming 1. And you can see the videos playing. You don't want to hear my voice. But if you just, once your video is uploaded and available, you just go to this little share link, grab the link if you just want a link. However, what you really want to do is you want to embed it. And this is going to use a tag that you guys have not learned about yet. Okay, it is coming up in a chapter soon. But you can just grab this code as is, bring it over to your authoring platform. And really, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we probably should have some line breaks here. So actually that indicates audio elements and video elements are inline elements. They're not block level. Oh, I lost my code. Now you guys probably do this like on Facebook all the time, right? And it's like not a big deal. Oh, there's a silly video of a cat. All right. So take a look here at what we're doing. There's a tag called iframe. It stands for inline frame. It basically is a way to allow you to take the contents of any other web page or website and exactly, you can insert it into your website. So here the source points to YouTube to pull in the video. It could just say yahoo.com and it would pull in all of Yahoo into the little iframe that we create on the page. So really what it's doing is it's creating a container on the page and then we're populating that container with content from somewhere else. So I'm going to save that. Let's take a look in the browser, wherever our browser happens to be now. I guess it's right there. All right, I guess I have to run it from here. All right, so you can see it went out to YouTube, it found the video, it shows the poster image of whatever YouTube decided it should be, and click play, and you guys, hello everybody, hello. It has all the standard YouTube controls, and if you want, you can click the little YouTube button, it'll take you to the place on YouTube. The advantage of using this approach, guess whose video servers work really, really well? YouTube. Great bandwidth, failover. Another advantage of using YouTube, the social aspect of it. People can search it, they can comment on it, you can edit right within the YouTube environment. there's really a lot of advantage. And who owns YouTube? Google. So if you do a search, chances are that people will find it are much better than if you just have it on your own website. And this can generate traffic directly to your website as well. You can't do Flash. Ah. Now, you are going to run into those situations, you know, you're talking about stuff getting flagged if it's on your own website, but if you pull it in through YouTube, it doesn't get flagged.
So it's still candid page, but like YouTube will like cut out a copyright warning to you, and like then you have to deal with it.
That's right.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
So like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and you know, people get away with all sorts of stuff. Like if I did a DVR recording of like Dancing with the Stars, right? A digital copy, and I put it like on YouTube or on my own website, that's a problem. But if I take my phone and videotape the TV, that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why, but that's the case. But you know, many advantages to doing it this way. So when you guys do video for your website, that's part of your assignment. This is the way I want you to do it. If you are going to have your own video file, it better be really small. Because I get a really big zip file, I'm not going to be happy. Did I say that enough?